Dr. Usha Ishwaran. I'm an alumni and 89 E&I batch, and I'm presently the CEO of SEEK organization, championing the causes of skill development and youth empowerment. And I'm also a motivational speaker and an effective contributor to social causes. Moving on to the inaugural address. Dr. V. Irayanbu, IAS Additional Chief Secretary and Director, Anna Institute of Management, Government of Tamil Nadu. Dr. V. Irayanbu is a versatile personality and focuses his energy in transforming the youth of Tamil Nadu. He has to his credit a rich and vast experience of having worked in government for nearly 30 years in various capacities. He has been closely associated with causes that affect the rural poor while espousing their cause. He is recognized for his impeccable integrity. Human mind is a vast field where all actions within and without one's control takes place. Around 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts run in each human being throughout the day. Yet the mind still manages to carry out multiple tasks every single moment for each human being. Mind helps humans to function smoothly. In essence, human life is based on one's mind. Dr. Irayanbu will be enlightening the audience on the nuances of mind management. And sir, I would like to welcome you to give your inaugural speech.
Dignitaries and friends, two Annamalais are in Tamil Nadu. One Annamalai that leads to enlightenment of the soul, and the other that leads to the enlightenment of the mind. Annamalai University, located in Chidambaram, was responsible in educating the underprivileged sections of the society for quite a significant period of time, and it has churned out many graduates of the first generation from nooks and corners of Tamil Nadu. It was also known for its literary heritage and scientific acumen. Engineering, medicine, agriculture, and all kinds of faculties find a place in Annamalai universities. Stalwarts graduated from this university, and they have left an imprint of their contribution to the state as well as to this entire world. With this background, the alumni of Annamalai University is noted for its integration and yeoman service. ITA 6th International Convention is being held, and it is a matter of pride for me to inaugurate this convention. This convention is unique because they have got the theme Revive, Relish and Rejoice. Revival can occur only when you become a student again. Student life is the best life in any human being. When you become a student, you try to learn more. You try to wonder at the world. The art of wondering leaves you fresh. You have lot of zeal to absorb from everything that you learn, and that revives the spirit in you. Then you start relishing. Relishing is not only the curriculum, relishing the company of the people. Without friends, this world can never be beautiful. If you are alone in this whole world, if no one else is there, the whole world may belong to us, but we can never be happy. The world is joyous because of the people whom we have around us. So relishing occurs by virtue of the company. Rejoicing doesn't belong to these outer celebrations. It belongs to the internal realization. It is an inner journey, and that journey is not by accomplishing the external things, but by contributing something to the society. Annamalai University alumni, particularly ITA, is known for doing a lot of yeoman service. Even in Tamil Nadu, they have done remarkable service at the time of calamities and in educating the auto rickshaw drivers. I am sure that this international convention will bring more solidarity among the members and make their purpose unified, so that they can educate the youngsters on the entrepreneurial opportunities available and make the young graduates who come out of the engineering colleges to become entrepreneurs and provide jobs. I wish them all the best, and I am sure that this international convention will bring lot of fruitful results with which they can go ahead and do a remarkable service. Thank you very much. I am extremely happy to address in this ITA 6th International Convention. Number 6 is very unique because it is the only number which turned upside down can become 9 and give more value. You will be surprised to know that the architects of the honeycomb very well know about the hexagonal structure. Hexagonal structure can accommodate more money and it helps them in storing more quantum of money. So number 6 is unique and special. Therefore, I consider that the 6th International Convention also has a unique opportunity for me to talk something about the management of mind. Mind is a very interesting subject to ponder over because we all have a lot of assumptions and presumptions about mind. We tend to go for various methodologies by which we can cool our mind. All of us are interested in a peaceful mind. After attaining all the riches on the earth, one would rest and wonder whether he could attain peace in the inner core of his mind. Brain and mind are two concepts which are to be understood first to know how to manage the mind. We all know about brain. Brain is an organ, but mind is not an organ. Brain and mind are totally different, and very often we use it interchangeably. Brain is the organ with which we are born, and mind is the one that the society inserts into our brain. Brain is similar to all the people, almost similar. There may be some variations in weight. But mind is unique for every individual human being. My mind cannot be similar to your mind. Even the children born in the same family cannot have the same type of mind. They will have different minds according to their exposure. We are born as fresh slates. The society keeps writing something or other. Sometimes it scribbles, sometimes it writes poems, sometimes it paints pictures. Whatever may be, but ultimately, mind is the product of the interaction with the society around us. We all have the same type of brain, but society introduces a vegetarian mind, a non-vegetarian mind. I often wonder whether the term non-vegetarian is correct, because the people who eat non-vegetarian food also eat vegetarian food. They also eat vegetables, fruits, cereals, and pulses. We can only classify them as meat eaters and non-meat eaters. That could be the better classification, I think. The society inserts a vegetarian mind, a non-vegetarian mind, a socialistic mind, a capitalistic mind, an atheistic mind, an agnostic mind. When a child is born, the family shapes him. It introduces him to various places of worship. It may be a temple, it may be a mosque, it may be a church, it may be a gurudwara, it may be a monastery. And tries to put the particular religion in the brain of the child. Then the child develops the believer mind. When the family happens to be an atheistic family, then the family introduces the concept of non-believing. Then the atheist mind is introduced into the child. When the father happens to be a trade union leader, the child happens to be the socialistic in nature, and the socialist mind is there. So mind is always the process and brain is the product. Brain is the hardware, but mind is the process. It is the software. Without hardware, software is not possible, but software makes the entire difference. Osho always used to say about conscience and consciousness. We always say that a boy should have conscience. Our system believes in conscience. When somebody commits a crime, we say he does not have conscience. Conscience is different from consciousness. Conscience is bred by the society, fed by the society, inserted by the society. That is why a meat-eating family doesn't feel guilty when it consumes meat. A vegetarian boy feels guilty when he occasionally happens to eat meat because his conscience is shaped by his family. His conscience is shaped by his society. His conscience is conditioned by the society. Whereas consciousness is one with which we are born. Consciousness means you decide whether it is good or not. Sometimes the society may vouch it, but you would not approve of it. When Buddha agitated against the consumption of meat, when he agitated against the sacrifice of the animals, he went against the conscience of the society because he was conscious. It was a pure mind. It was not dictated by the society. When the society dictates, it becomes the morality. When the government dictates, it becomes legality. Morality is different from legality. Sometimes something may be permitted by the law, but the society may not allow it. Sometimes the society may allow it, but the government may condemn it. So we have three separate compartments. The people who live according to the conscience are bound by the society. They are bound by the morality. The people who live according to their consciousness transcend the barriers of the society. They go beyond the society. That is why Thiruvalluvar spoke about vegetarianism when 90% of the people in his period were consuming meat. Meat was a regular food for the people, for their own survival. Similarly, he went against immoral trafficking. He went against gambling. We went against drinking because he never lived according to the conscience. He lived according to the consciousness. A man who lives according to the consciousness is able to throw the mind inserted by the society. At one point of time, by virtue of your self-actualization, you will be able to forego the mind that was given by the society and you develop your mind on your own. You are not bothered about the society at all. Those people who go against the society, that may be anything, it may be a literary creation. For example, Shakespeare went against the society. In those days, the playwrights used to talk about tragedy or comedy according to the classical unities, but he never bothered about the classical unities. He adopted his own norm and he lived ahead of his time. The people who live ahead of his time live according to their consciousness. They don't live according to their conscience. Consciousness means fully aware, 100% awareness. If that consciousness is ripped off from them, they would not know what is happening around them. We all live because of our consciousness. If consciousness is taken away from us, then we are just like a vegetable. When you enter the stage of coma, you don't have consciousness. When you enter the stage of dementia, you don't have consciousness. Your consciousness reduces when you become affected by Alzheimer or mental dementia. And it becomes completely absent when you enter into coma. Even in your sleep, you become slightly unconscious. But the difference between the sleep and coma is significant. In coma, you cannot be triggered by an external stimuli. Whereas in sleep, you can be triggered by an external stimuli and you can be woken up. Therefore, the mind belongs to the conscience that is bred by the society, fed by the society, inserted by the society, whereas consciousness is one with which you are born until the end you retain it. If your consciousness dominates the conscience, then you become enlightened. If your consciousness decides that this is not correct, though your conscience may permit it, then you become highly enlightened. And that basic difference is to be understood. Our mind is shaped by conditioning. There are two aspects which are to be differentiated. One is conditioning and the other is disciplining. Very often we take conditioning as disciplining. In the schools, children are conditioned. In the family, children are conditioned. Condition means something forced on the society, something forced on the children. It is not the inner blossoming. We have very often seen in the schools when the last bell is rung, when the gates are open, children run out of the school as though they are liberated from the prison. Why this happens? Because of so much of conditioning that is being done in the schools. Children are not allowed to smile, giggle, laugh and play in the name of education. And the children have to remain as an artificial entity, foregoing their own instincts. A child is supposed to sit silently for 4 hours. You go to any government office, have you seen any government official sitting 4 hours continuously in his chair and doing his work? Every 1 hour they go for a cup of tea, relax in the canteen and come back. Do you think that dealing with the files is tougher than going through the physics and chemistry of the revised syllabus? Definitely not. But it happens. We condition the children. That is why when the conditioning is removed, they become worse. That happened in the regime of Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell overthrew Charles I and he became the ruler, protector of England. The parliament gained supremacy. And Oliver Cromwell was a Puritan. He was against plays. He was against entertainments. That's why Shakespeare wrote in one of his plays, these Puritans prohibited a game called bear's biting. Bear's biting means a bear will be tied with around a pole, and hounds will be unleashed on the bear. They will come and they will tear the bear because it's tied, it can't do anything. And the people, the spectators will be around to enjoy this scene. A powerful beast like bear. You know very well that bear is much more powerful than tiger and even the lion. Sometimes you can see when the tiger encounters a bear, it will run away from the bear. And sometimes when the lion encounters a bear, it will be torn into pieces. Bear is a powerful one. And this bear biting was enjoyed by the people of England at the time of Elizabeth I. Oliver Cromwell, he prohibited it, proscribed this. Shakespeare writes that bear biting was proscribed not because of the sympathy for the bear, but because Oliver Cromwell did not want the people to enjoy. Puritans were against the enjoyment. After the regime of Oliver Cromwell, Charles II again came back to power. And at that time, the situation was worse. People were interested in all kinds of entertainments. When you control the people artificially, you can never discipline them. If you control your mind artificially, after some time, when it is let on its own, it will start freaking out. Therefore, disciplining is to be understood in the right perspective. Discipline means it is your inner blossoming. You do something not because somebody dictates, not because somebody coerces you. You do it because you enjoy it. You like drawing, so you do it. If someone dictates you that you should draw, if someone says you must relax, it is no more relaxation. Relaxation is to be done at your will and wish. It cannot be enforced. Discipline means you get up at 6 o'clock because you know that getting up at 6 o'clock is good. Getting up at 4 o'clock is good because you will be able to hear the music of the birds, rustling of the leaves, and the swaying of the trees very clearly in the early morning. You can enjoy the dewdrops on the rose buds just like the diadems. You have to enjoy. Unless you understand why a particular action is done, you cannot enjoy. The moment you enjoy, you do it on your own. There is no need for any referee. There is no need for any supervisor. You do it because you like it. You do it because it enhances your spirit. It enriches your soul. And there comes the beauty. And that beauty is something which cannot be explained in words. You can never ask a person, why are you disciplined? He gets extraordinary happiness in being disciplined. Conscience is due to conditioning. Consciousness is due to disciplining. The mind is conditioned. And the moment you discipline the mind, the conditioning goes away and it becomes an independent mind. All the people who achieved great feats in the society, it may be Karl Marx, it may be Abraham Lincoln, it may be Benjamin Franklin, it may be Lenin, it may be Mahatma Gandhi, they were all the product of a conscious mind. They were conditioned by the society. At some point of time, they threw away the clutches of the society and reigned on their own. And at that point of time, they become independent. They became trendsetters. Only the people who do not allow others to shape their minds can become independent thinkers. If somebody could become 100% independent, then he becomes an enlightened person like Buddha. He becomes enlightened like a Guru Nanak. And there comes the beauty of existence dawn in their eyes. They have got a beautiful radiance around them. When they walk, something beautiful happens. They walk as though a beautiful flower is floating on a water body. When they smile, the whole existence becomes fragrant. When they teach, they touch your heart. And that can happen only if you have an independent mind. Now, as I told you, brain cannot be separated from the mind. For example, if somebody has some problems in his mind, the person is not happy, depressed. The person has extraordinary anxiety. The person has a gloomy temperament. Somebody may have unbridled anger. All these things are the product of the mind. But in order to treat these problems, you have to deal with the brain, because mind cannot be seen separately. If you have a problem in the software, essentially you have to deal with the hardware. You cannot deal with the software. You have to deal through the hardware only. Even if there is a problem in the software, and if it has to be rewritten, then it has to be dealt through the hardware only. Similarly, if you have any problem in the mind, we deal with the brain. We should know something about the brain also, because brain is very, very important. Our brain is approximately 1400 grams. And this brain was shaped over a period of time. So many crores of years it has been shaped. And 60 lakh years ago, two branches separated from as the species of an ape. One became the ancestor of chimpanzees and the other became the ancestors of human beings. So our close relative is chimpanzee. Though we have orangutan, we have gorilla, baboons, still chimpanzee is very close to us, and we have 98.4% of the DNA akin to a chimpanzee. Almost 98.4% means only 1.6% has made so much of difference. Our closest relative is chimpanzee, and for chimpanzee also human beings are the closest relatives, not the gorilla or the orangutan. But the size of the brain of the chimpanzee is just 400 grams, just 400 grams. But we have got almost 3 times the size of the brain of the chimpanzee. Chimpanzee itself is very intelligent. It is very smart. It can make tools. It has got the theory of mind. Sapolsky talks about the theory of mind. The theory of mind simply means that you should know that others can think differently. Children cannot have the theory of mind. The children think that elders also will think like them. That is why children talk to us thinking that we will behave like a child. Only when they reach 2 years or 3 years old, they will understand the theory of mind. Even chimpanzees have the theory of mind, but not strong like us, because we are the only people who can have fantasies, dreams, convert those dreams into shows and enjoy. We can read stories and we can enjoy. Chimpanzees cannot do it. The theory of mind is there. A rudimentary theory of mind is possible in the chimpanzees. 400 grams only. But how human beings have got 1400 grams of brain? And that brain has made so much of difference. That is why we have become highly civilized. And particularly in the past 2000 years, we are able to invent so many things. In the past 100 years, we were able to invent so many gadgets, computers, aeroplane. So many things were invented by the human beings. How? That is mainly because of our brain. Why the human beings alone could have such a huge brain? Why it was not possible for others? No, it is not the case. There are other animals which have larger brain than us. The Neanderthal brain was larger than our brain. The dolphin has got 1700 grams of brain. Elephant has got 4 to 5 kilograms of brain. A blue whale has got 9 kilograms of brain. So their brain is larger than that of the human beings, but why they are not intelligent? Why they are not able to operate the computers? Why they are not able to drive the car? Why they are not able to cook and eat? It's because the size of the brain alone doesn't matter. The relative size of the brain also matters. In human beings, it is approximately, the size of the brain is 1:50. But in the case of chimpanzees, it is 1:150. In the case of gorilla, it is 1:500. In the elephants and all, the body size itself is huge. Our weight, if approximately 70 kilograms, the average weight of the elephant will be around 6 tons. Comparing the body size, the brain size is small. Similarly, in the blue whales, it will be around 13 tons. 13 tons means you can imagine the size of the brain is less. Why the dinosaurs disappeared? The dinosaurs had such a little brain. And that is why they were not able to survive. At one point of time, the entire world was Jurassic Park. But unfortunately, their brain was small. Similarly, in the elephants, you have a huge brain, but that brain is not for thinking alone. It requires such a huge brain for moving around. It has to control the body. In order to move, in order to have food, for performing the various functions of the body, it should know where it lies and it should know its position. All these things, balancing, all these things are done by the brain. So 4 to 5 kgs may be the size of the brain, but the body size is so huge that the entire brain is used for controlling the movements. Similarly, in blue whale also. But whereas in human beings, we have got a unique mechanism. That unique mechanism means the complex structure of the human brain. A human brain is much more powerful than any supercomputer that you can invent. It is almost equal to 100 laptops that you can keep on your lap and function. Such a big size. How human beings were able to have such a big brain? It is mainly associated with cooking. For example, an orangutan has to eat for 8 hours a day to make the brain active. 8 hours a day it has to eat. Where is the time left for thinking? Whereas a human being finishes a lunch in 10 minutes. Sometimes he finishes his lunch and at the same time finishes a program also. He sits in front of the computer, does some calculations and also eats his sandwich. That is because we started eating after cooking the food. When we started eating the cooked food, something different happened in your mechanism. Body mechanism changed totally because you did not require so much of energy to digest. So your intestine need not be so long, so lengthy, like a chimpanzee or a gorilla. So the entire energy went for your brain, and then brain size increased. And eating meat also increased the size of the brain. So the brain became more powerful, it became huge in size, and not only that, the remaining time was used for thinking and creating. There is no need for us to hunt continuously. When you started doing agriculture, Yuval Noah Harari talks about the 3 revolutions in Sapiens, the brief history of mankind. He talks about the 3 revolutions, the cognitive revolution which took place 70,000 years ago, the agriculture revolution which took place 10,000 years ago, and the scientific revolution that took place 500 years ago. He says that when man started settling in a place and doing agriculture, he had more time because he was not conscious of his food all the time. He can have food at his convenience. Food grains have been stored. So he used the remaining time for thinking, and that led to development of technology. That led to development of science. Then he started exploring this world, and that exploration led to a lot of discoveries. He started inquiring about the nature. All these things happened because of that. Therefore, dolphins are very, very intelligent. They can see the reflection in the mirror, identify that it is their own reflection. They are bright, but they do not have such a powerful mechanism like the human brain. There are certain complex structures in the human brain, and those complex structures actually make our brain unique and special. In the human brain, you have 100 billion neurons. 100 billion neurons means 1 billion means 100 crores. So many neurons are there in our brain. Out of them, 16 billion neurons are there on the cortex, cerebral cortex. And that cerebral cortex has that gray matter, and that gray matter is responsible. Sometimes the common monkey may have a bigger brain compared to the body size. For example, in human beings, I said 1:50, whereas in the common monkey that we see in the temples and other places, it is 1:17.5. But the gray matter is less. Ultimately, gray matters a lot. That is why it is gray matter. And that is responsible. And in the cerebral cortex, you have the frontal lobe, temporal lobe, parietal lobe, and occipital lobe. And the frontal lobe is responsible for decision making. The temporal lobe is responsible for your sensory perception. Sometimes you can see the people walking on the road, touching the others and not even feeling sorry for them because their temporal lobe is weak. And the third one is the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe is responsible for your thinking process, speech also. And the occipital lobe is responsible for forming a conclusive idea from various images. So these are all some of the points about the human brain that I wanted to tell you, a brief outline. Now, coming to the point of understanding about the uniqueness of the brain, first thing that we have to understand is the mind of the child is different from the mind of the adults. When a child is born, only 23% of the brain is available. The child is born with 23% of the brain. Only when it attains 23 years of age, brain development gets completed. That means till the age of 23 years, brain grows continuously. And before reaching these 23 years, we finish our education. That is why our education is not fully baked. It is half-baked because we complete our college education before the entire brain is grown. Now, we have to also understand about the difference between the adult brain and the child brain. The child brain, as I told you, when the child is born, only 23%. It doesn't have the theory of mind. And at the same time, there is a difference between a male child and a female child. The difference happens right when the child is there in the womb itself. From the 8th week to 18th week, the testosterone secretion happens when the child happens to be a male. And that makes the difference between a male child and a female child. For example, when the male child is born, it has unique characters. You can see the parents telling, my first child was a girl child, and rearing her was very, very easy. But the second child was a boy, highly mischievous. He was taxing us like anything. He never stays in a particular place, all the time running. He breaks the dolls, and we do not know what to do. And when the girl child was born, we left her in a place, and he used to give her some dolls, and she will play with the dolls. I will cook the food. I will wash the clothes. I will finish everything. But with this boy, I am suffering so much. This is not because of the problem of the boy. It is the problem because of the brain. The brain of the boy is different from the brain of the girl. Girls will be interested in seeing the face of the mother. Boys will be interested in moving objects. So if you want to calm the boy child, better to put some moving objects on the cradle. It will see the moving objects and it will be extremely happy. See the kind of preference in dolls. A girl child will be preferring soft toys. A boy child will be preferring cars, aeroplanes. You will be preferring rifles. You will be preferring knives. Because the mind is like that. His mind is adventurous. It's because of the testosterone. Similarly, a teenage mind is different. That is why we do not understand the problem of a teenage boy or a teenage girl. Shakespeare has written in his Much Ado About Nothing about the uniqueness of the teenage boys. The teenage boys cannot be predicted. Their brain development is like that. For example, the frontal portion of the brain, which is responsible for the decision-making process, will have less gray matter when the child reaches the teenage. That is why the teenage boy is not able to make correct decisions. And at the same time, the teenage boy will always have more emotional quotient. He wants to prove himself before the others. That's why you can see the teenage boys driving the motorcycles in a harsh way on the beach, trying to prove something to the others. They want to be adventurous. And they also think that what they think is correct. They also think that what they think is generally perceived by their peer. They always feel that the peer is the best judge. All others are useless. For example, the parents may suggest, you can study this course. The boy will not opt for it. He is guided by his peer. Some classmate of him will say, let us all join in this course, and that is the best course. And you can never brainwash him. You can never change him. He is conditioned because the teenage is like that. He will be argumentative. I told you, even among the boys and girls of the teenage, you can find a difference because right from the childhood, a boy child will not be organized. A girl child will be organized. And that occurs throughout the lives. That is why William Golding said, women always give better output When men give them a sperm, they give a child. When they give them a house, they give them a home. When you give them some grains, they give food. So a woman gives a better thing than what men gives to them. Similarly, you can understand that the teenage is unique, and to deal with the teenage mind is the most difficult thing on the earth. The only way is to become friendly with a teenage boy. The parents should be very friendly. Instead of advising, they can do only counseling. Instead of instructing, they can only give them suggestions. They should give them responsibilities. They should release them. They should respect them also, not in front of others. Then the next one is, why a few people are very happy with one wife? That is also because of the genes. For example, in Wolays, you have the prairie Wolay and the mountain Wolay. The prairie Wolay, they have only one pair. That's all. That pair will be lifelong till their death. Whereas in the mountain Wolay, they will have as many number of companions as possible. This is because of one gene. That one particular gene is longer in the mountain wolves. And that is why the same thing occurs in the human beings also. That's what evolutionary scientists are saying. Now again, the male brain and the female brain, as I told you, when the teenage also I told, when you grow also, the same thing happens. For example, the size of the male brain will be approximately average 1378 grams, whereas the female brain is 1248 grams, 1248 grams only. So the size of the female brain is less than that of the male brain, but it doesn't mean that women are weak as far as the thinking power is concerned, because the size is less in female, but they also have the same 100 billion neurons. It is tightly packed in women and it is loosely packed in men. That is why most of the men are loose. You can find that women have tightly packed neurons and they have some differences. For example, hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is responsible for your hunger. It is responsible for your ambition. It is responsible for your adventures. It is almost 6 times larger in males than that of the females. Whereas amygdala is 2.5 times larger in the size of in women than that of the men. So these brain structures also. For example, there are 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Right hemisphere is responsible for creative works and the left hemisphere is responsible for logic. If somebody is good at mathematics, that means his left hemisphere is very effective. If somebody is very good in writing poems, that means his right hemisphere is strong. These 2 things are connected by a structure called corpus callosum. That corpus callosum is responsible for linking both the hemispheres of the brain. If the corpus callosum is cut, then the person will go mad. For example, the right side of his hand, the right hand will be pulling his trousers up and the left hand will be pulling it down. In Tamil, they say that you pinch the child and also you sway the cradle. And that is possible when the corpus callosum is cut. The corpus callosum is an important thing to merge the functions of both the hemispheres of the function. In fact, coordinating the 2 hemispheres is very, very important. Otherwise, one hemisphere may do something and the other may do something contrary to it. In order to coordinate, regulate and integrate, corpus callosum is very much required, and that corpus callosum is stronger in women. It will be very thick in women. So in certain aspects, women use both the hemispheres if in listening. That is why women are astute listeners. They always complain, you don't listen to me, to their husbands. Men speak less. A girl children will speak faster than a male child because their language proficiency is very high. When they drive the car, they use both the hemispheres. But spatial intelligence is more for men. That is why men can draw a diagram without looking at it, whereas women cannot do it. Similarly, while driving the car, one time if the man has reached the destination, next time he can drive without seeing any references because the spatial intelligence will be more. But at the same time, emotional intelligence of women will be more than that of the men. These are all the things that we have to understand about the functioning of the mind. Sometimes people may steal your mind. Steal your mind means they may steal the work that was produced by your mind. For example, there was a person called Morse. People call it as Morse code. Telegraphy was invented by him by virtue of the assistance given by another scientist called Joseph Henry. But he appropriated as his own invention, and finally Henry has to go to the court, prove that it was his own invention. So sometimes they may steal the mind, sometimes people may steal the brain also. Einstein's brain was stolen by a university professor in Princeton. He stole the brain of Albert Einstein and kept it for nearly 33 years. He sliced it into 240 portions for doing the research, but he did not do anything. Later it was handed over to somebody else, and he analyzed the brain of Albert Einstein, and he said the size of Einstein's brain was just 1230 grams, not a very huge brain. Therefore, the size of the brain has got nothing to do with intelligence. They also said that his portion, which was dealing with the mathematics, and that was stronger in Albert Einstein. That is why he can solve certain problems directly by entering into the mathematical language. Einstein was not able to speak till he was 3 years old, but later he was able to speak so nicely, so proficiently. At the age of 16, he learned calculus on his own. There are so many concepts about the brain. One is that bilingual brain. They say that if you learn 2 languages, your brain will be stronger than learning a single language. You will be good in decision making. You will be good in logical thinking. Similarly, something called musical brain. If you listen to the music, the functioning of our brain increases. Then they also say that if you start playing a musical instrument, the size of the brain actually improves, because you have the conceptual tag, emotional tag, audio tag, and contextual tag developed intensely when you go for a musical instrument. Then our brain has got the plasticity. According to the job that you do, your brain shapes itself. In London, the taxi drivers have got their brain shaped to deal with the traffic nuisance. The traffic is very heavy in London. So, if you analyze the brains of the London drivers, the space that deals with the spatial intelligence will be developed intensely. So, if you do an activity continuously, your brain will shape according to the job that you do, the exposure that you have. Then memory is also conditioned by the brain. Sleep is also conditioned. We all know that the brain is responsible for understanding the pain of all other organs of the body, but the brain as such doesn't have pain. For example, you can open the brain and do any surgery, brain will not be able to feel any pain at all. Brain is responsible for cleansing all the organs when we are awake, but brain has to clean its dirt, its impurities also, and that happens only at the night time, and that happens only when you sleep. Only when you sleep, because it doesn't have a lymphatic system to the cerebrospinal fluid, it has to clean all the impurities. And you have to sleep in order to clean the impurities in the brain. That is why when you do not sleep, next day morning you feel tired. Now coming to the maintenance of the mind. If you want a healthy mind, first thing is you should have good food. If you do not have breakfast in the morning, you will definitely have a headache, because your brain requires 1/5 of the food that you eat. If you eat 5 idlis, the first idli goes to the brain. So you should have healthy food, regular food. If you have more antioxidants, more vitamins, more minerals, more protein, it is very, very important, and that will lead to a nourished mind. So having a healthy food. Similarly, having tea is good for your brain. Regular exercises are good for your brain. You should not be lonely. You should have friends, mix with them, because if you experience loneliness in your life, in the later part of your life, there are many chances for you to suffer from Alzheimer's disease or dementia. If you listen to music continuously, it can keep your brain active. There is something called neurogenesis. If you keep doing a creative activity, then new neurons will be formed in your hippocampus, and that will help you in retaining the memory. For example, they examined a group of 8 people in one university more than 80 years, and they found that all of them had their brain very young because they were doing a lot of activities. They were playing in the evening, they were going to the musical concerts, they were in the members of the literary forum. So do some creative activity if you want to keep your brain young. Again, your brain is a selfish brain. As I told you, when you eat food, the first quantum will go to the brain only, because only when the brain functions, all other organs can be directed by the brain. So brain is a beautiful mechanism, and in order to keep your brain intact and to keep your mind young, you should do exercises, have healthy food, mix with the people, be happy and be cheerful. Therefore, let us discover an independent mind of ourselves by being conscious of what is happening around us, and with 10% awareness, we can make this world much more beautiful by contributing something from our own side. We can also enrich this world. We can also make this world much more beautiful than what we inherited it when we were born. Keeping this in mind, we should know that it is not enough just to maintain the body. It is also essential to maintain the brain. It is not essential to do exercises for the body. It is also essential to do exercises for the brain. It is not essential to just beautify the body, but it is also essential to beautify the mind. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable and enlightening talk. I am sure that our alumni have been enthused with your inputs on the functioning of the brain and mind, and the difference between the conscience and the consciousness and its effect on the human thought process. I thank you once again, sir.